Friday, everybody. This is Peter McLaughlin with Blue Sky Hypnosis. Happy Live at 5. Today we're going to be talking about subliminal influence, decoding subliminal influence, all of the different ways. And I have to say, we can't in an hour or so cover all the different ways, but I'll try to give you a pretty good overview of how advertisers, people in positions of power like governments, and other entities, politicians and so on, businesses, will attempt to influence you. And they know the book on this. And it's very interesting when you dive a little bit deeper into it and you start to understand the different levers of power. You could call, some of it could be called propaganda, others could be called advertising, others could be called political campaigns. Others could be campaigns for different kinds of initiatives, changes that large entities, including governments and other organizations, want to have the people follow. So we'll be discussing all of this today. Please feel free to let me know, let everybody else know that you're here in the chat section. If you have questions, make sure you ask those questions. It's what makes this so interesting, at least for me. People are really supportive here. They help each other out a lot. If you have suggestions about what you'd like to see on future lives, please put those in the comment section or send me an email at peter@blueskyhypnosis.com and we'll see if we can't get that up and running for you. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist. Everything that I talk about comes from my perspective of being a hypnotist and a life coach for the last 17 years. And working and doing thousands and thousands of sessions and lots of amazing information, amazing insight, patterns comes back, along with just the education of how to enact subconscious influence. It's an absolutely fascinating subject, and I'm glad that you've come to join. So the first thing I guess that I will talk about are subliminal messages. So sub means underneath. So like a submarine is underneath the water. So subliminal comprises messages that could be considered to be subvisual, subaudible, and so on. Now what that means is your conscious mind doesn't recognize the input, what's coming in, but your subconscious mind does. And we know, at least from science, that when people make decisions, all of us, we're making decisions emotionally. We're making those decisions at the subconscious level. And once we've made that decision, then our conscious mind gets involved in order to justify or rationalize that decision. The analogy that I like to make is that the conscious mind is kind of like a lawyer. It doesn't really care whether it's representing the defendant or it's representing the plaintiff. It will make a very good argument for this person is guilty, this person is innocent. And it's the same with our conscious mind. When our subconscious mind makes a decision like, oh, I want to buy that new car, I want to get married, I want to get divorced, the conscious mind steps in and it starts rationalizing or justifying that decision. So advertisers have understood this for probably 100 years at least. And governments understand this, and large corporations understand this, and large power groups, let's call it, understand this concept as well. And we have never, the ability to influence people on a subconscious level has never been as powerful. 200 years ago, there were no cell phones, there were no phones, there was no TV, there was no radio. And with the advent of radio, that's when a lot of this really started getting off the ground. And then the advent of psychology, all of these things kind of came together. And as we advance technologically and people are wired up and connected 24/7, the ability to influence us, as I say, has never been greater. So I talked about subliminal messages. That would be subvisual, subaudible. An example could be on my channel, Blue Sky Hypnosis on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't. I create all kinds of videos. And one category of videos that I create to help people change in important ways, like to lose weight, for example, or to stop smoking, or to stop drinking alcohol, or to get into a life where they're leading a life of abundance with ample amounts of wealth, or they're able to get into a healthy relationship, or they're able to feel better about themselves in terms of self-esteem. One of the categories of videos that I make would be subliminal. And in this case, it's subaudible. So the only thing, if you were to play one of these, the only thing that you would hear is whatever the background sound is that I programmed in. It could be gentle music. It could be the sound of nature, like ocean sounds, or the sound of rain. It could even be like a white noise machine. And right underneath that are the words that are driving the mind toward the desired outcome. And what's really incredible is that the subconscious mind has that ability to extract the subliminal information. And it goes directly into the subconscious mind, where the conscious mind doesn't really perceive this. At least it doesn't perceive it readily. So when you walk into a room, your subconscious mind, which has this enormous processing power, it's millions of times more powerful than your conscious mind. It's accessing all kinds of data. Just the other night, I was watching Terminator with my son, and I think it was Terminator 2. And they show you the view, for those of you who've seen that series of movies, they show you the view from time to time of how the Terminator is looking at the world. And there's this like digital readout as the internal processors are computing all of the data that is surrounding the Terminator. Well, we're kind of the same way. But most of that processing, the vast majority, is happening at the subconscious level. And that's how subliminal influence and subliminal programming works. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up on the screen a couple of images that I found to just illustrate how sub-visual influence works with some of these pictures. So hang on one second. Let's see, we'll do this one first. I'll make it bigger. All right, so this is, some ad for Skittles, and for most people, it just looks like what you'd expect, and you're probably looking at, a counter filled with different kinds of candy, different kinds of manufacturers, and what they've put in here, and these are kind of crude examples. A lot of these examples I'm showing you are probably from like the 1970s. And I'm not saying the Skittles one is, but some of the other ones I'm going to show you. And I think that the people who do subliminal persuasion have gotten way more sophisticated than this. But this gives you an idea. So, what most people see is this honest, candy wrapper, but what you have is really the words S here in red, and then the first two letters of explosion create sex. So what they called them the depth psychologists in the 1950s, discovered is that the human mind is wired to instantly respond to certain kinds of stimulus. Sex is one of them. The other one is violence, and the other one is anything evil. It's almost like we've been hardwired or programmed to protect ourselves in the one case. Let's get rid of this. To protect ourselves from something that's dangerous, and in the other case, to procreate. And so our minds tend to zero in on these things. And they discovered that if they put in something, either an image related to sex, or the word itself, or they did something regarding evil, or something that was considered by the mind to be dangerous, it locks the attention of the person on that object. Another one, I'll throw up another one here. This is for Camel cigarettes. And again, these are probably pretty old and they're probably quite crude, but it gives you an idea. So this is a pretty cool image because it shows you on the top frame what was presented to the people for these cigarettes. And what the artist has done is that they've sort of highlighted the subliminal image that's embedded inside of this animal here. So you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but the image, and I'm not going to say it out loud what it is, but you can all see what that is. You can see that there's a man standing there, and there's something unusual going on with that man. And again, the mind is kind of wired to lock into this. The thought experiment that you can do for yourself is if you were looking at the world's most amazing painting, and I'm not saying it's the Mona Lisa, but it's very famous, and right next to it, a car crash was happening. Your mind would immediately turn you towards the car crash because it's loud and it is dangerous. And part of our survival mechanism is to be aware of anything that could cause harm to us. But in the same way, we also have that same kind of hardwiring, as I said before, about anything that deals with procreation or sex. And so that's another example. And then there's another quick one here too. And again, probably a very, very old ad. This kind of looks like it's from the 70s to me, and very crude. But again, most people wouldn't see this. The letters written here in the ice, you can see the 3-letter word right here in the ice that's next to the bottle of gin. And for most people flipping through pages of a magazine, they're not going to notice this at all. But that's going to get embedded in their subconscious mind. So if you can imagine what has happened in, say, the last 50 years in terms of technology, if I, as this just normal person with very basic equipment, can create subliminal, sub-audible content, put it up on YouTube, and millions of people watch it, and thousands of people write in to say that it worked for them, that they didn't feel the need to overeat. It was amazing. They don't know why that happened. You can start to get an idea of the sort of onslaught that might be coming at us. There are other things that illustrate this subliminal influence that go back probably to the early 2000s in terms of universities doing studies. So one quick one is that if you put a bunch of people in a room and you ask them to cooperate with each other, the cooperation will be fostered. People will actually try to help each other if you have on the perimeter of the room, let's say there's a bunch of computer monitors there, and on the screens of those monitors is something sort of neutral, like fish swimming across, or like this picture I have here of an ocean. If, however, you put pictures of currency, money, different dollar bills and yen and euros floating around, or images of that on the screen, they notice that the people will actually sit farther apart from each other. They will be less likely to cooperate with each other. And that same research has probably been used on you when you have gone to like a really nice restaurant and you open up the menu at the restaurant and you're reading about the different dishes that they have on offer. And if they just put a number for the price next to the dish, like let's say that this dish is $37 or $47. To just put a 47 next to the dish, you will spend more money on average than if they put a $sign and then a 47. So this is all around us. This concept of subliminal influence, including things like colors. So if you were to look at the logos of Pizza Hut, Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King, those 4 different fast food outlets, what you would notice very quickly is that they all use the same color palette. They all are basically using red and yellow. And the reason they're doing this is that these colors stimulate the appetite. These colors stimulate a person's desire to make a quick decision. So it's clear that, again, we're being hit on all fronts with this kind of assault that I suppose you could say has to do with selling, getting people to buy products, services, food, getting people to buy people, celebrities, politicians, getting them to buy ideas. All of this is a kind of softening up. This is a term that was used in World War II when, the Americans and the British were going to invade, say, Normandy in World War II, where the Americans were going to invade an island in World War II. They would bombard the island with artillery from ships and with bombs from planes. And the idea was to soften up the defenses, to cause enough damage that when the troops came ashore, it would be easier for them to achieve their objective. So we are being, in my opinion, we're being softened up over and over and over again, so that when the big moment comes, when the big sale comes, we're ready to say yes, or at least not offer resistance. And since we're on the metaphor of war, I'm just going to close this out. I want to talk about, I think I might need my glasses here. Here we go. So in the Korean War, in the 1950 to 1953, when the U.S. was involved in the Korean War, American prisoners of war were subjected, for the first time in modern times, were subjected to intense psychological pressure. In fact, this is where I believe the term brainwashing originated. That the communist North Koreans had studied a lot of the psychology and were now using this on the American prisoners. And one of the things that I thought was extremely interesting was they would endeavor to get a prisoner to admit to something, to say that something was true when they knew it wasn't true. And once that happens, once a person admits under pressure that something is true that they know is not true, it creates a kind of shame inside. And that shame weakens a person's moral resolve. And it makes it easier then for the next thing in intensity to come forward. And it makes it more likely that the person will agree with that too. And so on, and so on, and so on. And I believe that this technique is being employed against us now. And I don't think it's necessary to go into examples, but I think if you really kind of look at our world and say, gee, I wonder if we're being asked to go along with something that clearly isn't true. And I'm saying that could be a way of softening people up so that the next thing that happens, we're more likely to agree to that, and the next thing, and the next thing. In fact, in the world of these university studies, there's something called a foot in the door technique. And it's the same idea for sales. If you can get someone to agree to something really small, then it's much more likely that they will agree later to something much bigger. So for example, if you walked up to someone's house, you were going door to door for a political campaign, and you said, hey, will you put this giant billboard in your yard? I mean, huge, like 12 feet by 10 feet or something, or 20 feet by 12 feet. Most people are going to say no to that. But if you went up to them and you said, hey, could you put this tiny little flag thing that only sticks up about 6 inches, advertising the campaign, could you just put that in your yard? If the person says yes to do, and they're much more likely to say yes, you just put that there, then if you come back a week later and say, will you put this giant billboard in your yard? They're statistically much more likely to go along with that because they've already said yes to this much smaller ask. It's almost like a level of defense has been breached. So if you think of, like a castle or something, that putting that little tiny flag in the yard, it's like taking down the first layer of defenses. So when you come back and ask for a big one, you have a much better chance of achieving that. And this kind of thing has been known in the world of professional sales for a long time, something called a yes set. And when I was trained, I worked in the world of sales, and when I was trained as a hypnotist, we learned about the yes set, but it's something that salespeople had been using for years. And it kind of goes like, as you sit there in the chair and you're breathing, person goes, yeah, I'm sitting here in a chair and I'm breathing. And as your heart is beating, yep, my heart is beating. And as you can feel your body seated in the chair, yeah, I can feel my body seated in the chair, you start naturally to relax deeper. So I got 3 statements that were a yes, they were obvious to anyone. And the fourth one, it's almost like the fourth one isn't obviously true. It isn't obviously true that you relax deeper just because you're sitting in the chair and you're breathing and your heart is beating, right? That's called hypnologic. That's not valid. But to the subconscious mind, it's saying yes to this, yes to that, yes to the third one. So the fourth one is easy to just, now that door's been opened, to just walk right through with a yes. These are just a few of the techniques that are being used on us on a daily basis in a commercial sense to sell us stuff, and also in a societal/political sense to sell us stuff. I'm going to get to, before we close today, on how to recognize this. You know, like I looked at some of these ads that I was showing you before, where the words are embedded in there, and this is what I do for a living. It's subconscious influence, subconscious persuasion. I've written a book on the confluence of sales and subconscious influence, and yet I'm a human too. When I look at something, when I glance at something, I rarely see what's deeper in there. It's when I search on the internet and I go, okay, what has something embedded in it, that I see it. Having said that, there are other things that I do see, however. So for example, I think many of you might have seen this yourself when watching television. You're watching especially a news program, and there's graphics on the screen, and the graphics are kind of swirling like this. And as the graphics are swirling, there's a countdown. So they put the number 10 on the screen, and then they put the number 9, and then they put the number 8. They count all the way down to 1. And sometimes there's like music playing. It's the sensory overload along with the swirling graphics. Well, that is directly out of how a hypnotist works. One of the most common ways to induce someone into hypnosis is to get them to focus on something specific. It could be, like the swinging watch. I've never used that myself. Or it could be looking at a candle flame. It's called eye fixation. And at the same time, you count down 10, 9, 8, 7. And you're giving other patter with the countdown. But it's just so amazing to be sitting there, and I rarely watch television, but to actually see that is quite stunning to me. And that's something that pops right out to a hypnotist. All right, let's see who's here and if there are some questions. Heather Marney, glad you're here. And Lana, welcome from Nebraska. Good to have you here. English Rose, glad you're here too. Hey Miriam, good to see you. Yeah, that's that background. I know you recognize it. Sarah W., glad you're here too. Smurfette, Sharon Sipe, cool. Heather Marney looks like she has a question. I believed this for many years. When I was in high school, in my psychology class, we were introduced to finding subliminal messages in magazine ads. I found it fascinating and scary. Yeah, it is. It is. And I suppose that what always goes along with something that's scary is the potential to learn more about what it is that is scary, and to arm yourself with that knowledge, and then to put that knowledge into practice. I think that's what we're supposed to do. I think that's how we're wired. I remember after 9/11, a terrorism expert came on TV and said something like, for people who are afraid, what we recommend is learn as much as you can about your enemy. Learn as much as you can about their tactics. Learn as much as you can about what you can do, and then take action. And I think that idea, that concept, that unfolding pattern works for a lot of things. When I was diagnosed with leukemia, I did the same thing. I resolved to look it square in the face, learn as much about it as I could. What what caused it, what made it worse, what could possibly cure it, to really understand it from all directions, and then take action. Change the diet, change the exercise, get out in the sun, drink green tea, go to a naturopath. Like, there were all of these things that I decided to do, and it was in doing that, learning more about it and taking action, that my fear went down. But really good point, Heather. Really good point, because it's the same for me. I'm alternatively fascinated and horrified. And I would take this moment to say, and I'm not going to get into details because of the platform that we're on, but the last 3 years have been a huge exercise in everything that I'm talking about right now. So, okay, let's see here. Dara, hello, Dara. Glad to see you. Sharon Sipe is here, and scrolling down, Andrea Rumsey, you're welcome. And let's see, here is Dara. Dara says, Peter, may I ask, is there a relationship between subliminal messaging and paranoia? Yeah, I suppose there is. I think there's a relationship between anything that is presented as a threat, and when you cannot personally identify the threat. So cogitate on that one. What kinds of threats have we been offered? And of those threats, have we been able, with our own two eyes or our senses, to detect for ourselves exactly what's going on? Or have we had to take a lot of things just on trust? So anytime you're told, oh my God, something horrible is going to happen, or something horrible is happening, and you cannot verify that for yourself, then that's naturally going to lead to a kind of paranoia. So yeah, it's a really excellent point. Thank you for making it, Dara. Appreciate that. You are a smart Irish dude. Okay, K Moon. Hi, Peter. Thank you for your videos. I listen to them daily, and I've seen them make a huge difference for me. That's awesome. Outstanding. Thank you for sharing that. Here is MH. Hi, Peter. I have a question, if that's okay. Of course. I have a few things I want to address. I'm listening to the weight loss and procrastination on different days at work. Is it okay if I flip between tracks? It's a really good question, and it's something that people will ask from time to time. The conventional wisdom on this, the conventional wisdom is to focus on one thing at a time. And once you feel like you've got a handle on that, then move to the second one, and maybe sort of have like a maintenance on the first one so you don't lose it. So if your garden were choked with weeds, and you wanted to, redo your sprinkler system, because I just had to do that myself, the idea would be you'd focus on your garden, you get all the weeds out of it, then you'd turn your attention to the sprinkler system, but you would still come back every couple of days and just do a little bit of weeding so it didn't overgrow while you were dealing with the sprinkler system. That is the conventional wisdom. So as long as you're putting, say, 70% of your effort on one of them, so for example, weight loss, then I think you could have about 30% devoted to procrastination. Hopefully that helps. Thank you for asking the question. A very good question indeed. Lynn Thornton says, hello, Lynn. I had no idea you were a survivor too. Congratulations. Well, thank you for that. It's great to be here. I was told in 2003 that I would maybe have 10 years. So I'm very happy. Here is K Moon, says, I'm curious if I can send you an invitation to be interviewed on my channel about self-hypnosis to create love, health, and money. Yeah, please send me the invitation. You can send it to peter@blueskyhypnosis.com. That's my email address. And anybody, if you're interested, I do offer 20-minute free sort of exploratory calls if you're interested in working with me one-on-one. And that's at my website, blueskyhypnosis.com. Okay, so let's go into the next thing that I had written about in the email that I sent out to everybody, and that is linguistic patterns. So hypnotists are taught about how to use language to the advantage of the hypnotist. And if the hypnotist is working on helping somebody with something, it's obviously to the person's advantage too. These techniques, these concepts represent power. And power itself is agnostic. It's how the power is channeled that determines whether it is used for good or it's used for ill. A simple example would be electricity. You can use electricity to end someone's life. You can sit them in an electric chair and throw the switch and that person will die. You can use the same power of electricity to save their life with an external defibrillator by getting their heart back in rhythm, their heart going again if they've had a cardiac arrest. So these techniques, it's kind of like white hat, black hat, can be used for either. And I think that's an important point to make. So linguistic patterns would represent things like framing. Framing, you can think of it in the literal sense of how it changes your opinion about a piece of artwork that's inside the frame. So back to the Mona Lisa. If you had the Mona Lisa, instead of in a gilt gold frame, you put it in a frame that's pink with little bunnies on the edge of it. It would change your relationship to that painting. If you change the frame to black and you put swastikas all around it, it would change your relationship to the painting. Same painting. So framing is a way of changing your attitude towards something, and hypnotists use framing constantly. Glass half full, glass half empty is a very simplistic example of framing. I've seen it on television, for example, where we always have, when there's a war, there's always a lead up to the United States getting involved in a war, and it's preparing the American people to make commitments of trillion and a half, $2 trillion, whatever it is, colossal amounts of money, and the blood of our servicemen and women. And one of the talk show programs, a news talk show program I remember seeing on one of the wars 20, 30 years ago, created a frame. And the frame was, should we engage in sanctions against this country, or should we invade them? There was no option of, should we engage in diplomacy? Should we do nothing? So the box was created, and then those were the only options to discuss. This also happened with a healthcare thing, and it doesn't matter what your opinion is on it or mine. It's just the fact that here were all the options that were placed in there, but there was a huge option that was just left off the table. That's an example of framing, and framing is used constantly in persuasion. It's used by salespeople, it's used by corporations, it's used by governments, it's used by politicians, it's used by news programs. It's a major thing. Another linguistic pattern would be a bind, and that goes along with the framing. So a hypnotist might say, I don't know whether you're going to go very deep into hypnosis or you're just going to go to a medium depth of hypnosis. And either one is fine. It doesn't really matter, and you can allow this to unfold at your pace. Well, it's telling the subconscious mind, again, like framing, here are my two choices. I can go deep into hypnosis or I can go to a medium depth. That's called a bind. We talked about the yes set. We talked about, there's also something called the negative clause. This one I think is one of the most powerful ones. And it's really useful for you in terms of being your own best coach. A lot of us have an internal voice that is very limiting. I worked with a client earlier this week who, for the first time in 50 years, is free of this limiting voice that she had in her head that told her she was stupid, she told her it will never work, told her she was ugly, it told her all of these negative things. It was like having a devil sitting on her shoulder, or the worst coach imaginable that's always saying something negative. Well, the negative clause means if someone says, I will never drink alcohol again, like if their intention is to not drink alcohol again, the conscious mind hears never, But the subconscious mind just hears drink alcohol. If you say to your children, don't track your muddy shoes into the house, it makes a wreck out of our house, their subconscious mind doesn't hear the don't. All it gets is track muddy shoes through house. You're undermining, you're working at cross purposes with yourself. Hypnotists will use this like saying, maybe you don't want to go into hypnosis. Maybe you won't go into hypnosis. Maybe you won't go very deep into hypnosis. That's okay. You don't have to go into hypnosis if you don't want to. You don't have to feel deeply relaxed because maybe that's not something you want to do. All the subconscious mind is hearing is go deep into hypnosis, go deep into hypnosis, go deep into hypnosis. Feel calm and relaxed. So for example, with the kids and the muddy shoes, you would say, instead of don't track your muddy shoes into the house, you would just flip it around and say what you want, which is, please leave your muddy shoes in the mudroom so we can keep our house clean. It doesn't mean your kids are going to be, boom, they're going to be perfect. But all of these things are about, if you imagine scales, putting more and more weight on one side of the scale. And if you multiply that over multiple iterations, multiple contact points, and if you multiply that over multiple people or hundreds of people or thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions, it starts to have a very powerful effect. I mean, think of how political elections, like let's say a presidential election, there have been plenty of cases where it can go 52 to 48. It can go 51 to 49 in terms of percentage of people voting for one candidate or the other. So a couple of 1, 2, 3 percentage points here or there can make the difference between this candidate won and that candidate lost. Very, very powerful. Same with advertising. They're not trying to sell the same thing to everyone. They're just trying to get a critical mass. Same with selling a policy or an idea. They don't need everybody. They just need a critical mass. Okay, let's see if there are any more questions here. Here's Miriam. Hello, Miriam. I feel this is why it's so important to connect with the intuition, which connects to a much greater intelligence, naturally filtering out the negative manipulation, but allows hypnotizing for the good. Yeah, I think that I agree. I agree that we have cut ourselves off almost completely from our bodies and what our bodies are telling us. So many of you have heard me talking about a pendulum. Well, all a pendulum is a magnifier. That's the piece of string or chain with something heavy at the end. It's just magnifying what's going on in your body in response to a question. Or you could imagine it magnifying what's going on in your body in response to a situation. So if you went out on a date, your body is communicating to you on the date whether this is someone that you like, whether this is someone that's right for you, or it's not. And it's often the conscious mind that talks us out of a feeling that we might have. It's the same in business. It's the same with politicians. That our bodies are these very finely tuned communication devices. We don't think of them that way, but they are. And they're under the control of the subconscious mind. And I think it's important to balance our conscious, logical, rational mind. There's a very good purpose for having that with our intuitive wisdom and understanding. And that's what Miriam's talking about. It's almost like that concept of a man and a woman together create life, that these two halves make a whole. And I think there's not a part of us that doesn't have a purpose, but you can overemphasize the masculine. You can overemphasize the feminine. And when you get out of balance, you have problems. So really good comment, Miriam. Thank you for making it. And I certainly agree with you on that. Courtney McGregor. Hello, Courtney. Sorry I'm really late. No problem. It's early morning here in Australia. Welcome from Australia. Do you have to wear headphones for subliminal sleep hypnosis? I can't wear them for long when I'm awake and not when sleeping. Yeah, you don't have to wear headphones especially for the subliminal sleep tracks, because you can imagine the process of making these. I know I wouldn't want to be sleeping with headphones on, so I make them so that you absolutely do not need to wear them when you're sleeping. You can be headphone free the whole time you're sleeping. The only time headphones are they're not even necessary. It just gives you an advantage if the track has something called binaural tones on it. And the tracks will always be identified if they have binaural tones or if they've got some kind of a frequency embedded. And the binaural tone sends a slightly different frequency into the left ear as into the right. Excuse me. And the mind is confused because these two frequencies are so close to each other. It makes a third frequency, and the mind tends to entrain with that third frequency, and the person goes deeper into a hypnotic state. Frequencies are known to create different kinds of feeling states. So I'm going to be publishing a video tonight on meeting and connecting with your guardian angel. And the music that is embedded in that track is tuned to the frequency of 528 hertz. Now, it's not binaural, so you don't have to use headphones with that one either. But a frequency is going to affect you. High frequencies are associated with health, with happiness, with joy, with grace, with forgiveness. Low frequencies are associated with sadness, with depression, with anger, with sickness. And we tend to harmonize, I used the word before, entrain to the dominant frequency in our environment. 200 years ago, before electronics, that would have been the frequency that the Earth emits, called the Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz. Now, everything that is plugged in or has a battery is emitting some kind of frequency. It's probably not so good for us. But with anything, technology has a positive side of the edge of the sword and a negative side of the edge of the sword. And on the positive side, we can start to use specific frequencies for healing. I honestly believe that at some point in the future, that is going to be the mechanism by which people heal from diseases, is delivering very specific frequencies to their body. Nikola Tesla, the genius of the 20th century, said if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy and frequency and vibration. This is a very, very, very important concept, and I believe we've only scratched the surface of it. So thank you for the question, Courtney. Glad to have you here. So K Moon says, do you think binaurals make subliminal tracks more effective? If so, in which ways? I would say binaurals make any track more effective, whether the track is a strictly audible track or it's a subliminal track, only because it helps with that entrainment. It helps take you into a deeper state of relaxation and a deeper state of hypnosis. And some of the frequencies that are delivered in the binaurals also are reputed. It's not very well studied, but they're reputed to help different parts of your body to heal. One of the most tantalizing pieces of evidence with respect to frequency in general, not just binaural, is a field called cymatics. That's spelled with a C. C-Y-M-A-T-I-C-S. And what you can look this up on YouTube. People basically put spread sand on a thin sheet of metal and then apply a frequency to it. And what happens is that the sand reorganizes itself on the sheet of metal based upon the sound vibration. So there's nothing touching the metal. It's all sound vibration or a frequency. And some of the frequencies cause the sand to arrange themselves into these gorgeous mosaic patterns, kind of like if you looked at a snowflake under a microscope, just this impossibly beautiful pattern. And then other frequencies cause a kind of distorted pattern. So this is this very, as I say, tantalizing evidence that the music we listen to, that the thoughts that we think, the TV and shows that we watch, the electronics that we're in contact with, the pictures that we see are affecting us on a very, very, very deep level for good or for ill. So thanks for the question. And Dara says, I've been trying to crunch thoughts down to understand a limit I have to doing my purpose. Can risk phobia Can risk phobia be a thing? Yeah, of course, absolutely. So the job of your subconscious mind is to protect you. And anytime your subconscious mind it perceives that there is a danger in your immediate environment, or by engaging in a particular activity that you're contemplating engaging in, it will send you into a fight or flight response. Now that fight or flight response can be a full-blown panic attack. It can be all the way down to something that we would say, oh, I'm nervous or I'm stressed or whatever. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. Could there be some kind of aversion? I'm just going to put your thing up here again. Could there be an aversion to taking a risk? Yes. So if you took some risk in the past, and as you know with the work that I do, that could include a past lifetime. If you took some kind of a risk and you had a catastrophic result, then there could be a phobia about doing something similar. Keep in mind the subconscious mind has no sense of time. Everything is right now. And when you get triggered, it just means the subconscious mind has been activated to a threat, even though consciously you look around and go, there's no threat here. But to the subconscious, it is a threat, and it's like a lion is about to attack you. All right. Oh, here's Smurfette is saying, can't wait for that one to come out. We all need guardian angels. Absolutely. So that's going to be published at 7 o'clock Eastern US tonight, which is only an hour and 15 minutes from now. So look for that. That'll come out. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe. Blue Sky Hypnosis on YouTube, and click the bell notification icon, because then it tells you when a new piece of content comes out. It doesn't just sort of plop it into your feed here and there. Jane Kusenik says the same thing. Peter, I'm looking forward to that video. I'm always looking to try and connect with my spirit guides and my higher self. Yeah, super cool. So hope you guys like that one a lot. All right, I'm going to move on to different topics that I have here. So behavioral triggers. When I was thinking about this one, I was thinking the simplest way for me to wrap my arms around the concept of a behavioral trigger is by thinking about Pavlov or Pavlovian responses. This is the Russian scientist who conditioned a dog by giving the dog meat powder and at the same time ringing a bell. And at some point, after a certain amount of conditioning, all the scientist had to do was ring a bell, and the dog would salivate because the dog had associated the ringing of the bell with getting meat powder. We do the same things. We start to associate one thing with another. We can be conditioned, just like a dog can, to respond in certain kinds of ways. So music can definitely evoke a certain kind of feeling state in us. Music can also evoke certain kinds of behaviors or make it more likely that we will engage in certain kinds of behaviors. So if you think about ads, say pharmaceutical ads, for example, they are often set to music. It's kind of happy, calming, soothing music, like from the 1970s. That's the target market probably that they're going after, but the music is also like, it's a beautiful morning. It's a beautiful morning. And they're setting this whole mood, they're setting this whole scene, and they're using images. They're using usually a healthy looking older couple, but fit, walking along the beach with their gray hair, and the wind is blowing in their hair, and they got that song playing behind there. And you watch that enough, and it starts to set a trigger, like a Pavlovian trigger, or an anchor, we would call it in neuro-linguistic programming, between that product that you're associating with the song and associating with the image of these happy, healthy people walking along the beach. That's the most common. Another way that music is used is it's used in stores. So you can walk into a store. I don't know if, I don't really go to malls, but I've been into a Lululemon store, and I think they had music playing in there. If they didn't, please forgive me. But the sort of the louder the music, the more a person shifts from, call it the left hemisphere of the brain that's responsible for rational thought, into the right hemisphere of the brain, which is responsible for emotions and feeling. And where the merchant wants you when you're in their store is they want you in that feeling state, that feeling groovy, feeling really good, feeling happy, and feeling, because not the part of you that's thinking, how much is this? How much are these yoga pants? Like, and are there other options? Like, if I spend on these yoga pants, then you get my idea, right? It's almost kind of like that idea of taking the dollar sign off of the menu, because the science says you'll spend more money if the dollar sign is not present. You're not thinking about money. It's just numbers at that point. There are also techniques by which you will tip someone more. Fascinating stuff. Anyway, what else do we have here? Oh, yeah, we talked about the shame. Cool. Advertising techniques. We talked about colors, about Pizza Hut, Wendy's, McDonald's, and Burger King, all using the same colors. The other big thing in advertising is there's a saying that's been around for a long time, which is repetition equals reputation. So the more times they can present an ad to you, the more likely it is to get into your subconscious mind where it'll take hold emotionally and you will take action by buying something. And again, you could be buying a product, a service, or you could be buying an idea, like a policy, or you could be buying a person. And in hypnosis, repetition is one of the ways that you get something into the subconscious mind, a new idea, what a hypnotist would call a suggestion. Repetition is also the only way that conventional education works. If you want to learn something, you just keep repeating it. And what's happening is it's breaking down the door of the gatekeeper that protects the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind won't accept something that it doesn't already agree with. The gatekeeper will stay in the way. So if you're trying to learn a new language, it's the same thing. It doesn't agree with what's already there. So repetition kind of breaks down that door. Hypnosis moves the door to the side. A person in a position of authority moves the door to the side. If your friends tell you you have a tail, you're probably not going to look around and see if that's true. If your doctor tells you you have a tail, you'll probably be glancing back over to see if it's true, because the doctor is coming from that position of authority. Emotion moves the gatekeeper out of the way. If you're laughing uproariously, if you're very, very sad, if you're very, very scared, that gatekeeper moves out of the way and all that information goes directly in. So kind of like that idea of a boutique store like Lululemon. If they're playing music kind of loud, it moves you into that emotional part of you, moves the gatekeeper out of the way, and now you're more likely to make a decision based upon just feeling groovy rather than how much is this? Do I really need it? Is there another place I can get this that won't cost as much? If I get this, does it mean I can't get something else, like something my kids need or whatever? So I think you guys get the idea. All right, let's see if there are any other questions here. MH says, sorry, no need to be sorry, it's okay. Just another question. I get incredibly overwhelmed when I have too many times to do at once. Literally, my stomach turns over. I don't know if you could elaborate on that in terms of the mind. Okay, so MH, I'm not sure. You might have to clarify this for me. When I have too many times, I'm not sure what that means. Wait a second, let me just look at it again. When I have too many times to do at once. Oh, too many things to do at once. It must be too many things to do at once. Yeah. This is actually a hypnotic technique to induce people into hypnosis, called an induction. There is there's two different categories. So there's a rapid induction, and there's a slow, often called a maternal induction. Most hypnotists, if they're not stage hypnotists, will use a slower induction, the sort of maternal one, where someone's just sort of guided gently over a period of time to enter into a state of hypnosis. A rapid induction actually uses what you're talking about, MH, which is confusion. You give the mind too much to do. You overload the mind. And what happens is by overloading the mind, you're inducing a sense of confusion, and confusion creates a mild sense of anxiety or panic. It's not overwhelming. It's just this sort of this little bit of confusion. The mind just doesn't know what's going on because it's being given too much at once. And into this little window where this confusion has been created, the hypnotist says, sleep, in a very authoritative, forceful voice. And the idea is the mind is looking for a way out of this confusion. And when given a very simple command, it tends to go to that command and the person can drop right into a deep state of hypnosis. So yes, what you're describing by being overloaded would definitely, at some point, for any of us, would cause a sort of, would cause confusion, and the confusion would cause a kind of panic. And the mind is looking for a way out at that moment. Just know and understand that. So even if you're watching like something horrible that's happened out there in the world, that all these voices talking and the things blowing up and all these things happening can cause that same kind of anxiety and fear. And a forceful voice that offers a simple solution can be something that the mind will take as a way out of that conundrum. So hopefully that makes sense. Courtney McGregor says, thank you so much for answering my question. I felt the way you have explained it. I save all of your videos to your own folder. Oh, wow, so cool. I play them while I sleep. Take care. Much love and light to you always. Well, same to you, Courtney. Awesome says, is it hot sitting on the beach? How do you keep the sweat off your forehead so it does not drip in your eyes? Touche. Very good. Very good. And it does get hot sitting on the beach, especially in certain parts of the world, like where I live. And then you just have to go in the water. So maybe I need to go in the water. Martine Massey says, in Germany is a doctor who uses frequencies to restore the electric transport in the brain that is damaged by Wi-Fi, a bleeding, or large CVA, cardiovascular accident. I have seen an astonishing result with a friend. Yeah, this is the future. I really believe this is the future. There was a man in the 1920s who, his name was Raymond Royal Rife, R-I-F-E, who, under the supervision of many of the most august doctors of the time, cured cancer, cured something like 13 cases of cancer, under the supervision of all these doctors in the 1930s, 20s or 30s. And he did this by using frequencies. And his work was apparently destroyed. So yeah, this has been around. It's coming back, and I think it's invariably going to be what we think of in the future when we think of healing. Awesome says, I slammed that door to the side. It's how I quit smoking cold turkey after 30 years. Well, good for you. Way to go. So says you almost had me. Almost seemed like I was really on a beach. Maybe one day I'll broadcast from the beach, because I live not far from the beach. So maybe I'll try to do that. I'll have to figure out how to make the sound work so that it's not, like all the wind and everything. But that would be kind of fun, is to take a jet ski out to one of these beaches and broadcast from there. That would be cool. I would definitely need help for that, though. So let's shift into how to protect yourself from all of this subliminal influence, because that is arguably where the rubber hits the road. Great, I know about all this. I know about some of this stuff. I know what's possible. I know some of the places where this could be happening, but what do I do to protect myself? How do I ameliorate this onslaught of subconscious persuasion techniques, let's say? And I guess I wrote down a number of questions that you could consider asking yourself. One of them is, and let's think about the government, for example. The government wants you to do something. They want you to take an action. They want your support. They want you to do something. How hard are they pushing? And are they invoking an emotion in you by trying to get you to do this thing? Are they trying to create fear? That's probably a better way of saying it. How hard are they pushing? And are they trying to invoke fear? Because when a person moves into fear, they move out of their prefrontal cortex. They move out of the executive functions of their brain, and they move back to the hind brain. They move back to the lizard brain. The lizard brain is only concerned with survival. It's not the place where you engage in critical thinking. It's the part of you that is activated when a lion is attacking you. When they're coming at you, that's where you move to. Well, that happens when you watch a horror movie. That happens when you watch the news and you hear about all these tragedies. So if the proponent of what it is that they want you to do is trying to invoke a state of fear, know for sure your thinking is going to come back here. It's not going to be the part of your mind that in the moment you're going to be able to really parse it. And this is why I think that some people, when they have a big purchase to make, they talk about, let me sleep on this. Let me think about it. Let me get out of this moment where the salesperson's talking to me and I'm all excited. I get this emotion going inside of me and they're telling me that I have to act now to get the discount and blah, 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 blah. Let me just slow it all down, because I want to move out of that part of my mind that's just concerned with perhaps surviving or looking to get a quick win and get back to the rational part, the prefrontal cortex. So how hard are they pushing? And are they invoking fear in you? Next one, are they limiting your time to think about it? Is somebody saying, look, you have to act now, operators are standing by, this deal is not going to be here tomorrow. You want that interest rate, you got to sign right now. You want that deal, you got to sign right now. There are 5 more people lined up that are going to buy that if you don't get it. Are they compressing the time? Are they compressing if it's a sales situation, are they compressing the object? We're running out of supplies. We don't have enough. Because that invokes this part of the mind, which is, oh my God, I may starve if I don't get this. I may die if I don't get this. These are all techniques that are used to manipulate. And then, are there options beyond what they are saying? In other words, if they're saying to you, here's this thing, it's super horrible, you should be afraid, you don't have any time to think about it, and there's no other option. For me, red flags would be going up everywhere. Bing, 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 red flags. And I want to slow it down so that I can do my own research, so that I can think with my critical faculties. Is it something that you're being told everyone is doing it? This is one of the principal ways of influencing people, is the effect of the peer group. 4 out of 5 Americans do this. Everyone's doing it. You're the only one who's not. This is a way of influencing you. So that is the kind of simplest way that I can offer advice, is to just ask yourself these questions. What do they want? How hard are they pushing? Are they trying to invoke fear? Are they trying to say, and this is part of the fear, that there's not enough time? You have to act right away, immediately. Is there not enough of the stock of this thing that we're talking about? Another way of activating the fear, the lizard part of the brain. And are there any other options? When I actually take a step back from this, these are the things that I would suggest considering. Along with, if you're in an atmosphere, if you're in an environment where it's kind of like a disco or a nightclub, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Don't make a decision right there. Even if it's in a mall, walk out into the I don't know what they call that, a causeway or a hallway or the common the common thoroughfare, and just give yourself 15 minutes. You know, sit down out there. Just sit down. If you're with somebody else, talk to them about something else. Talk to them about this thing that you're thinking about getting. And then if after 15 minutes you still want the $300 yoga pants, great. Walk back in there and get it. But slow it down. You know, in 99% of the cases, unless your house is on fire, you should have time. You know, and that ask yourself what is the interest of the other side? Do they have a financial interest in this? Do they have an interest in power? These are all questions that are valuable to ask yourself. And I think in most cases, you can afford to slow things down, to do your research, talk to other people, sleep on it, wake up in the morning, be thinking from here. And when you realize if I'm agitated, if I'm nervous, if I'm fearful and worried, probably not a great time to make a decision. Wait until you're calm and then decide what's right for you. And to Miriam's point, let's combine our prefrontal cortex, our rational conscious mind. Let's combine that with what our body is saying. You know, tune into your body. Use a pendulum and use the two halves to make up the whole to decide what is best for you. All right, see if we've got any other questions here before we wrap it up for the day. Leanne Richter says, frequency, word of the day. Absolutely. Yeah, Sarah W is, yes, broadcast on a beach. All right, I'll have to take that challenge, I think. I have to, well, let me think about it. Let me make sure I'm not committing to something that in the clear light of morning, tomorrow morning, I'm like, why did I say yes to that? So I'll definitely think about it. MH says, also just to say, I really enjoy the clips you were releasing lately. They have so much insight and wisdom. It's very much appreciated. Well, that's awesome, MH. Thank you for that. And just for the rest of you on the broadcast that may not know what she's talking about, I'm starting to package shorter clips, a lot of them from these broadcasts, and package them into, it could be a 1 minute clip. It could be, I released one a couple days ago that was just under 6 minutes. So more digestible bites that have more, kind of video illustration that's going on inside of them. And it's just a way of offering up sort of the opposite side, if you will, of the sleep hypnosis videos that go on for 8 or 9 hours. But rather these things that somebody could maybe take away a key point and it only takes them 5 minutes or a minute or 3 minutes or something like that. So that is what she's referring to, and I'm definitely going to be doing more of that. And here's Miriam. I will help you with the filming from the beach settings. You can count on me. Awesome, Miriam. You have to let me know when you're coming back. Awesome says, I have not watched the news in 15 years. Good for you. I'm going to give you a round of applause. And then Awesome also says, my granddad taught me to question things and look at things a bit deeper. Yeah, I mean, that thing about TV, I've talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating. It's kind of like what I said, if you walk into a store and it's like you've walked into a nightclub, with strobe lights and music and scented whatever being pushed out into the air. It's definitely happening to move you out of your conscious rational mind. It's definitely being done to evoke your emotions. So television, compared to reading your news in the written form, has way more power to influence you emotionally. And for that reason, I have always advocated that people consider reading their news rather than watching their news. So perhaps with that, I will end it there and hope you guys have an awesome weekend. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you to those of you who made comments and asked questions. As I said, that's the part of this that I really appreciate the most. And look for the next one. Probably going to be doing it 2 weeks from today. I'm giving myself a little bit more time between these because now I'm able to package the content into smaller bite-sized portions, hopefully to reach more people. And again, hope you guys have an awesome weekend. Thank you so much. Take care.